Who are our favorite recommended running back and quarterback plays for the tricky Week 18 in fantasy football? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league year-round. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day as well. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, Michelle, we're here at Week 18. I know there's some wonky leagues that still play into this week, and really there's a handful of teams sitting players, but there's a lot on the line. That's what the NFL wants here, where teams have to play for something and play well, but we have to figure out who are the guys playing and the guys we can trust most and have some little extra motivation, right? That's what we're looking for as well, whether they're on playoff contenders or teams just trying to play for pride here, something that we want to look at for sure. So we'll look differently. We usually do our running back and quarterback rankings here, and we do it a little bit different this time around because, again, the rankings are weird because there's a lot of major names out of there. Christian McCaffrey is not going to be there. Lamar Jackson is not going to be there. So you look at it, a lot of different things there with this week. Again, you just have to look at the guys that you know are playing for sure. Some teams are being coy about who they're playing, some are not. So we want to kind of navigate through that. So we will instead look at our favorite RB plays of the week. Michelle will take 3. I'll take 3. We'll look at some fades as well. Then we'll do that with quarterbacks in this show. So a little bit different, but again, giving you the guys you want to target. So Michelle, getting that explanation out of the way, it's your turn to reveal your 3 favorite running back plays of the week.
Yeah, I think my absolute favorite this week has to be Bears running back Khalil Herbert against the Packers. I know the Bears personally have no shot at making the playoffs, but they do have a shot at kicking out their biggest divisional rival, the Packers, out of the playoffs. So I think they're going to go all out to beat the Packers. And I actually think the Bears win this game. That's just a prediction of mine. But all of a sudden, the Bears have decided to use Khalil Herbert the way that I thought he was going to be used this offseason, right? Going into the season, I was like, Khalil Herbert's a really good running back. He's going to be the starter. He's going to get the carries. And he didn't for most of the year. But the last 2 weeks, they've given him 20 carries and 18 carries. Shocker. He's really good when he gets touches. But he's now had 3 games this season with 18 plus carries. In those games, he's averaged over 6 yards per carry, over 20 fantasy points per game. I mean, you can run against the Packers. So I love this for Herbert. My next one is Najee Harris. I know he gets a tough matchup against the Ravens, right? They're a tough defense. But we don't know what starters are going to be playing. They could be resting the top guys on the defensive side of the ball to make sure they're healthy for the playoffs or just give them more time to rest. But also at the same time, they haven't allowed a lot of points, but they have allowed 4.5 yards per carry to running backs this year, which is the 6th most in the NFL this season. So it's not like they're dominant at stopping the run game. Najee Harris has been getting it going with Mason Rudolph. He's had 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. It's getting a ton of carries because the offense is actually able to move the ball with Mason Rudolph. So I think you got to just keep plugging in Najee Harris. And then my last guy here at running back will be Devin Singletary going up against the Colts. Amazing matchup. The Colts have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs this season, behind only the Cardinals and the Broncos. And like Dameon Pierce isn't a thing, right? It's a Devin Singletary show. Pierce comes in and gets his a few touches each game. But I think Devin Singletary looks really good. Is averaging nearly like 5 yards per carry over the last 4 weeks. And with CJ Stroud back, I expect this to be a high-scoring matchup, and it's a must-win game. So I like everyone on this offensive side for the Texans here, but especially Devin Singletary.
Well, Michelle, I really like your picks, and I look at Khalil Herbert. Yeah, I don't know why it took them so long to get to this backfield. I think they were trying to force Donta Foreman in there. Then he had some personal things that kept him out here. So it's Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson. I think they finally had the right combination against the Falcons. And Najee Harris, again, he's good, people. I mean, that's what we've seen. If they block it up, stretch the field a little bit, he's going to produce. He's a very good running back. He just needs a little bit of support. And now that he's got it with them stretching the field, you're seeing the production. Now, Devin Singletary will add another twist to this, Michelle. He is among the players that can get an incentive bonus in week 18. The number that we're looking for is 165 yards. So, look, it's not a lot of money to him, but it's a lot of money to us, $125,000. So, can he get 165 rushing yards? I don't know. That could be a bit of a stretch here in this game. If they do, then the Texans are probably winning this game. So somebody to look at there. But yeah, that's always on the line here. Now, Kenneth Walker is my number one choice. This is a really good matchup against the Cardinals. They allow the most fantasy points overall to running backs, however you slice it. Now, there's no incentive for him except keeping Zach Charbonnet at bay, and the Seahawks are going for the playoffs, right? So you look at this Cardinals matchup, it's a bit of a trap. The Cardinals just took down the Eagles, changed things up in the NFC East. So the Seahawks are going to be wary, especially after losing to the Steelers last week. So I think they're going to feed Kenneth Walker quite a bit. Get well game for him. Cardinals pass defense has actually improved a little bit. So the running game, however, is where they're still weak. So look for that. Zamir White, I'm really impressed with this guy. Now, I thought I would be all in on Tyjae Spears as maybe the back that I'm targeting next year when Derrick Henry leaves Houston. But Zamir White, I don't know why, if you're the Raiders, you would want to bring back Josh Jacobs. He gets hurt. He's too much money. Zamir White looks good in every game. And I knew this. I mean, I knew that, again, it's a Georgia back. I mean, when is the last time a Georgia back looked bad? So when you look at that, Zamir White against the Broncos, really good smash spot at home. And I think the Raiders are going to really want to take it to the Broncos this week. They want to play for Antonio Pierce, try to get him that job, defense, running game. I think that's where you want to go a lot with the Raiders. And Tony Pollard, look, that name just might make a lot of fantasy managers cringe. I mean, he's up there in the running for biggest bust based on where you took him. If you took him in the first round, you were highly disappointed. If you took him in the second, you weren't all that thrilled. But this is the week. The Commanders are really not good against this type of back, the quick, explosive back. They can give up big games to him. They need to get Tony Pollard in space. They need to get him going for the playoffs, right? I mean, they're going to have to run the ball a little bit better. So I think Tony Pollard, you look at his history, I think he had a big game against them in this matchup in a similar situation. So Tony Pollard, again, the Commanders just don't have much of a run defense now. So Walker, White, and Pollard are my three choices this week.
Yeah, love those matchups for Walker and Pollard there. And then with Zamir White, as long as Josh Jacobs is out, like that's a smash spot for him. And I know that the Raiders, or really the Broncos, don't really have anything to play for, right? But at the same time, Jarrett Stidham and Zamir White do have something to play for. Like they're playing for their career. They have to show something so that they can get playing time moving forward, or they're fighting for that, right? So there's still these young players that haven't had the chance yet that are still going to be going all out in week 18, and that is Zamir White. Now, my biggest fade of the week is the running back on the other side, though. It's Javonte Williams, and I know like he's still young and he's still going to be fighting to look good, but at the same time, he's had the opportunity to look good and it's just not happening. I mean, it's only gotten worse throughout the year. They're still leaning on him. Like last week, he still had 15 carries for 41 yards. Over the last 3 weeks, he's averaged under 2.7 yards per carry in each of those 3 games. Since week 11, he's averaging 3.1 yards per carry, like atrocious efficiency there. And he's had only one good fantasy performance since week 11. I'm not touching it. He played the Raiders earlier. It was all the way in week 1, so things have changed, but he had 17 touches in that game for 57 yards, 7 fantasy points. The Raiders defense is just, they can be solid, right? They can be really bad, or they can be solid. I think in this matchup, it's going to be a low scoring affair, at least on the Broncos side of the ball with Jarrett Stidham. And with Jarrett Stidham, I just want nothing to do with Javonte Williams.
Yeah, I mean, Javonte Williams, it's been a struggle. I really thought the Sean Payton influence would be good on him, but apparently Sean Payton's influence wasn't good on anything in this offense. Really, I mean, I don't know. He just has not felt totally comfortable with Jamal Williams out of, or not Jamal Williams. I'm looking at Javonte. Jamal's a guy that I'm going to fade as well this week. But when you look at Javonte, that you look at his skill set, it's so good, right? I mean, if he's healthy with his knee, then there shouldn't be any issue. Like we were debating him and Breece Hall, who had the bigger upside, right? Coming back from the knee injury. And then there's a clear separation. It was Breece Hall, despite having a terrible offense around him. So I don't know what you're going to get from Javonte Williams, but I know just like Russell Wilson for Jared Stidham, they want to look at Jaleel McLaughlin a little bit more in this game. So that's not good either. So he's not going to get that volume we're used to as well. And I think, again, the Raiders defense is going to play like gangbusters. They want to make sure Antonio Pierce is the next coach. And I think you'll see that from their play. So really, I don't want to play anything Broncos related as much as possible in this game, especially not the running back. Now, my guy, this is a guy that we arbitrarily play week in and week out, and he has the occasional big games. This guy's entire career is based on a big run or a big game, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's just kind of mediocre. He just kind of tries to hit the home run, and then that doesn't come, or he checks out of a game, and it's not all that great, then he just disappears. And Saquon Barkley, again, getting the volume the way that Javonte Williams does, but what did he really do last week against the Rams? Like, they got into a negative game script. They were thrown all over. Like, I don't expect a positive game script against the Eagles, and I also don't expect them to run well. The Eagles' run defense, I know it's been a little bit cracking of late, but the Giants have not run the ball at all well this season. Really, if Saquon doesn't get a big, long run touchdown or like a random reception that goes for like 30 or 40 yards, he's pretty much useless in fantasy. So you're playing him like a boom or bust wide receiver. So again, Saquon, we'll see what his future is, right? I'm not sure like the Giants are totally buying into him either. So these are two backs that could also be on the move after disappointing week 18s.
Yeah, and again, Barkley, he's on that 1-year contract, right? So he's
Yeah,
not going
for
to want
all
to get
these
hurt
guys.
in week 18. He's going to need a lot of receptions to be good for fantasy. So I agree with you there. If that doesn't come, it's going to not be great. And then who even knows if he plays the full game in a very
Yeah.
meaningless game for the Giants. We're going to get into our favorite quarterbacks and our 2 quarterbacks to fade this week in week 18. Before we do that, we have to hear from one of our sponsors. This episode of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast is brought to you from Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guaranteed, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you just create an account on the Game Time app and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Vinny, we got some quarterback decisions to make this week. And even if, you don't play in week 18, we're still playing DFS, right? So what are 2 of your favorite quarterbacks to play this week, whether it's in your fantasy championships or in DFS?
Yeah, Geno Smith is someone I'm looking at as well. And I just did mention Kenneth Walker, and you mentioned how much you like the Texans this week and overall offensively. Well, I also like the Seahawks. They need to win this game badly. And I will have another twist for you in this one. Geno Smith is actually playing for a bit of a jackpot here. Look, he needs some help to get this done, but he has to take care of his part of the equation. $2 million if the Seahawks make the playoffs. That's a little bit more than the other one with Devin Singletary. So, look, I don't know if that's in the back of his mind. I mean, I don't know what the fraction of $2 million in like a $20 million contract is, but it's still significant, right? A motivation. That's why it's called an incentive. So you can go out there and play well. So I think Geno's just had a rough year. Part of it is the offensive line got banged up a little bit early. Kenneth Walker's been in and out of the lineup. I think they didn't know exactly how to incorporate that third receiver, right? That was a little bit off. It was kind of weird. You have the third receiver, he's less effective because, again, he's not as comfortable with it. So I don't know. Geno Smith next year, I'm not going to be totally into him at all. But this particular game, I also think Kyler Murray is going to do some damage on the other side. We just saw him get into a shootout with Jalen Hurts. So that is also going to prompt Geno Smith to put up some numbers. So I like it. The receivers have good enough matchups. We're going there in a controlled environment, no weather in Arizona. Now, Tyrod Taylor, look, I will definitely give him a game ball from last week. It happened. He was the key to my fantasy championship. Okay, I also had the Jaguars defense, but those are the two guys that carried my team to a championship last week. And this is exactly what I expected. A mistake, some rushing yards, a lot of volume thrown downfield, and a big play from your recommendation, Darius Slayton, right? He came through. So that combination is real. And Taylor has got that's what I like about Taylor. He just plugs and plays and does what he needs to do, right? Hey, you're behind. You can count on him to run, throw deep, take chances. He doesn't care if he gets intercepted either. So that's the way I like the way he plays. We've talked about these veterans that facilitate. So look, the Eagles' pass defense has been terrible all year. We talked about fading Barkley. They're going to have to throw a ton. And Darren Waller came alive last week on top of Darius Slayton. So look, there's enough weapons there in New York. And what I like about the Giants, their whole organization, kind of like the Steelers, right? Very prideful, very traditional. They fight all the way to the end. They're going to keep playing well in this game, and all the guys are going to be inspired and rally around Tyrod Taylor to try to upset the Eagles as well. So a lot of good stuff there. And the Eagles have also talked about, Michelle, resting some players. So we'll see if that actually happens here, if they just give up and expect the Cowboys to beat the Commanders.
True. That could definitely happen there. And you brought up Kyler Murray in that Seahawks game against Geno Smith, and that's one of my favorite plays of the week. I think he should end as a top 5 quarterback pretty easily here against the Seahawks defense that's been struggling. And Kyler Murray's had back-to-back good fantasy weeks here. He really seems to be coming along. And last week they let Mason Rudolph. No, he didn't have a lot of fantasy points, but also it's Mason Rudolph. But they let him average 11.4 yards per pass attempt. I mean, that's just insane, especially when you're considering the Steelers' offense is normally a little short passes. And then from weeks 13 through 15, they allowed Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Jalen Hurts to all have 21 plus fantasy points. And in that Jalen Hurts game, he put up 82 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns against the Seahawks. That's kind of how I envision this game. Kyler Murray's going to be able to run all over them. James Conner's going to be able to run all over them. There's going to be a lot of scoring opportunities. That's going to be good for your pick, Geno Smith, because the score should be high, right? But I like both of the quarterbacks here. I think you would agree with me that Kyler Murray has the much higher ceiling and safer. But you went with the more dangerous route, and I understand trying to go deeper there. And then my other guy, CJ Stroud. I mean, we haven't seen him have a good fantasy week since November. It's been a long time since he's put up a good fantasy week, but I think it's coming this week. This is a win, you're in, lose, you're out for the Texans. I mean, you can't have bigger stakes on the line for any team. It's the same way for the Colts, right? But I just think in this matchup against the Colts, earlier on in the year against the Colts, he put up nearly 400 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. This game's in a dome, so you don't have to worry about weather, which is super nice in the beginning of January. And the Colts have not played anyone. So you might look and be like, oh, they've been pretty solid against quarterbacks. Since week 9, these are the quarterbacks they have faced: Bryce Young, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Jake Browning, Mitch Trubisky, Taylor Heineke, and Aiden O'Connell. Like, Baker Mayfield is probably the best of the group. That's pretty bad. And Aiden O'Connell last week against the Colts put up 300 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Jake Browning in week 14, 270 yards, 275 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. If they can do it, CJ Stroud should have 300 yards and at least 2 touchdowns in this game. So I really, really like him this week as well.
All right, I was trying to figure out how the Colts are in playoff position, but I think that answers it right there. Like, Gardner Minshew isn't blowing the doors off, but he's just been the better quarterback on the field by just being competent in a lot of those games. So now we understand. But now he's facing Stroud. I agree with you there. It's a really good matchup for Nico Collins and for Dalton Schultz, who should be rather busy in this game. So I do like that. There's an avenue for him to put up some numbers here. So, Stroud, look, he's had a big rookie year. You got to finish it strong here. And that's really going to be what you remember most, right? Not necessarily the numbers, but if he can put it up here, he was good for fantasy. Culminate that in reality with playoff berth, that'll be exciting. Now, Michelle, you've got some interesting fades there, and these are guys that one guy I disagree with, but I totally on board with the other. I want to reveal mine real quick. Tua. Look, this one's pretty obvious. I don't know if Jalen Waddle's going to play. They sold the high ankle sprain there as potentially returning right away. They all of a sudden they sat Raheem Mostert, which was a surprise because everyone thought he was going to play. Look, Mostert opens up things, right? He's a reliable running back who says, okay, we're going to get the field open. But no, John Waddle does two things, right? Makes him throw to Durham Smythe and some other randos, right, that we don't want getting the ball. And it also puts the coverage attention on Tyreek Hill. And that's not good, right? And Tua is kind of limited in his reads, and he's not going to give you the running, right? That's a problem. He's not going to run his way out of trouble. So this is an obvious fade for me, but Tua, yeah, I can't trust him in this matchup, especially against the Bills, who are going to be highly motivated. Had a bad season, but they can forget all that and win the division in this game. And Baker Mayfield, look, the Buccaneers messed around with the Saints last week. They got a mulligan. They can still win the division. Don't throw the ball on the Panthers. Just run, run, run. We saw it last week, right? Just run. And just don't put your quarterback in harm's way. Just take the field goals, tack them on, run, run, run. Just get a win and get out of there. Don't force some things here. So I could see one touchdown pass for sure, or two. I don't see a lot of yardage. I could see some mistakes as well. So not into Baker, especially after last week.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with these two. Tua would be way too hard to play, and Baker does, right? It's what he
Yeah.
does. When he has that high and we expect him to do good things, he falls flat on his face, and that's what he did. But in this matchup, there's no reason to trust him. My two guys, and I know the one you don't agree with is Jordan Love, right? Against the
Yeah.
Bears. I am fading him, and it's not like if you're in your fantasy championship in week 18, play him. You've been leaning on him. He's been great, right? That's fine. It's more like I don't want to pay up for him in DFS because I don't
Right.
like this matchup against the Bears. I think this is going to be super hard divisional matchup. The Bears have nothing to lose. They're going to go all out and try to make this Packers team miss out in the playoffs. You have Jaden Reed injured. We don't know if he's going to play. You have Christian Watson. We'll see if he plays. But this Bears defense has been really, really good. Since week 10, they're allowing just 222 passing yards per game and 1.3 passing touchdowns per game, 11.9 fantasy points per game. During that span, they've allowed 9 passing touchdowns to 16 interceptions. Their secondary has stepped up over the second half of the season. This is not going to be an easy game for Jordan Love. I think maybe his best chance is if there's garbage time, right? If the Bears just like beat up on the Packers, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I do expect Justin Fields to have a really nice game. I expect the rushing to have a really nice game. We'll see how many times they can turn those a lot of yards into points. And I think that depends on how much Jordan Love has, right? If there's that garbage time for him on the other side. But I do expect this to be lower scoring for Jordan Love. And then with Trevor Lawrence, it looks like they expect him to come back. Huge game for them against the Titans. But with this shoulder injury, I'm not risking it. And plus, the Titans have been pretty good as of late, too. They held Tua to 0 touchdowns, 240 yards. They held Stroud last week to 213 yards, 1 touchdown. And again, the Titans have nothing to lose while going up against a divisional opponent that they can knock out of the playoffs. So I think they're going to be playing super hard. And it's just been, he's just too injured right now, right? With Trevor Lawrence, I don't want to trust him. He had that nice span of run with games when he was scoring a lot of touchdowns, especially rushing, but I don't expect them to be utilizing him as a rusher near the goal line with this shoulder injury and the previous ankle injury.
Yeah, I mean, I could also see a scenario. Part of it is that teams are just ripping the Titans defensively, right? And they don't need to throw a lot against them. And
Yeah.
we've seen that. I mean, the Tua game, that was the Dolphins scored defensively and dominated that game, and they still lost somehow. I don't know how that happened. But when you look at it, yeah, Trevor Lawrence has had a rough season overall. He and Justin Herbert didn't really live up to the expectations, really lofty expectations, that middle tier of QBs, along with Joe Burrow, right? Really unfortunate circumstances, but they really haven't. And I don't want to necessarily force myself to play Lawrence. The only reason he creeping up in the top 14 or 15 is because a lot of main guys are sitting this week. Now, Jordan Love is interesting. I think I could see it going either way this week, to be honest, Michelle. Like, the Bears defense is pretty tough, and I could see that being the issue, or I could see the Packers going up and Jordan Love not throwing a ton in this game. And it's a little bit ugly there in Lambeau Field, the frozen tundra. So there's different ways they could go. with that outcome. And then I could also see Jordan Love completely blow up, and it's a wacky shootout between him and Justin Fields. So you're right. I think it's a little unpredictable, and that's a reason that I think that's a good enough reason to fade someone. So I think that's a fair call by you for sure on Jordan Love.
Yeah, and we'll get into some backup running backs and quarterbacks
Oh,
that you can consider starting for week 18. We have some teams that might be sitting their starters, at least for a majority of the game. So we'll get into those next segment.
Yeah, we'll go rapid fire on those because
Yeah.
we've given you some good details here. But before we do that, we have to tell you about an exciting way to get in on the football action. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you as well by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, FanDuel is the official betting partner of the NFL, and it's America's #1 sportsbook. So why not get in the action here? It's one more week of the regular season, but we know the playoffs are big, and there's going to be a lot of good action there. A lot of great matchups ahead. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets. Win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet. You can look at some live same game parlays. You can find bets that you like in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and winning combinations there. So check it out. All with the games this week. You're a little tougher with not knowing who's playing for what team, but you can go out there. We gave you a lot of good information there that you can take advantage of. So check it out at FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel.com/locked on. You make your first bet a layup and get that special offer with the bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, let's close the show here. And look, these are the weird times when I have to try to figure out what backup is going to play where, but we'll just run down it. So we'll go back and forth, and I'll just give you a couple players on the team, and you say yes or no, and I'll give you my answer. So let's go 49ers, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, and possibly Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold's a yes if he ends up starting. Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. I think I lean the Jordan Mason side only for the fact that they might also rest Elijah Mitchell after
Yeah.
the first quarter or so because he's injury prone and they want him to be healthy. So Sam Darnold and Jordan Mason would be my two here that I would be willing to play.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I would only play Mason if Mitchell's out because I don't want to split backfield against the Rams' good run defense, right?
That's true.
Right. So I do like Sam Darnold quite a bit. Yeah, you almost have to plug and play him. It could be Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz, maybe. We'll see if that plays out in this game. Now, going to the Rams, Ronnie Rivers looks like he could lead the backfield with Royce Freeman. Any interest in any of the Rams runners not named Kyron Williams?
The issue is Kyron Williams might be playing the whole game, right? It depends on if
I
the
wouldn't
Rams
do that.
care about
Yeah.
getting the 6 or 7 seed or not. I mean, it would change likely to play the Lions or the Cowboys. They might have a preference. I don't know. But I think it's too much in the air. And if Matthew Stafford's not playing, because he would not play over Kyron, like that, then I don't want to start any of the running backs. Because if Stafford's not out there, that offense stinks.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't know why the Rams would. Kyron Williams has been hurt, and he's had a high volume, right? You got to rest him up a little bit, I think.
Well,
So
if they do rest Kyron Williams because he is injured and play Stafford because they want to win, then I do think Royce Freeman at least becomes very interesting.
yeah, we'll see again. The Rams are so fickle with their running backs when they have good running backs. I don't know if with this combination, so I'm going to avoid there. Ravens, I'm a little bit more interested, I guess, but I'm not sure if we're going to see Justice Hill. I'm not sure we're going to see Melvin Gordon, but the Raven I would play actually among that group is Tyler Huntley. If he starts, we've seen him be a good starter before, and he can put up numbers. So I would say Huntley, and I would say you would get enough weapons out there with him opposite Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about Tyler Huntley. The Steelers have actually played Huntley quite a bit. I feel like
Yeah.
they always get Tyler Huntley. I don't know how. But if Justice Hill is the starter and he's going to get a lot of touches, I think he's going to be like that would be a great game. You just never know how much he's going to get. But there's really, I mean, unless they're super worried about Justice Hill getting hurt, you would expect Justice Hill to be out there a lot. He's been getting targets. So I like Hill a lot in this matchup if they're going to, give him the work.
Yeah, that means Melvin Gordon's probably going to have 3 touchdowns in this game or something ridiculous, but that's the way it goes. And with the Browns, I mean, there have been conflicting reports. Kevin Stefanski said, we want to play to win, but we want to be careful and smart and judicious with players. So I've seen Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt pop up injured on the list every single week. I think they were going to lean away from these guys, but it's such a great matchup against the Bengals. So I have to say yes on Pierre Strong Jr. if he's going to carry the workload.
I really like Pierre Strong Jr. It would make no sense for them to utilize Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt a lot. They are the 5th seed no matter what happens. And I get like maybe wanting to beat the Bengals, but also the Bengals have to win and have a lot of other stuff happen. So it's not like the Bengals win and they're in the playoffs. So I don't know. There's no incentive for the Browns to start their guys in this game. It was such a great matchup, like you said, the Bengals. I really like Pierre Strong this week, and I think he's a great pickup and play, especially if you're struggling for an RB2 this week.
All right, one last team we want to get to, and this team pretty much does this all the time. So we're pretty much guaranteed they're going to rest players. Keep in mind, the Chiefs are running out of healthy running backs. Isaiah Pacheco just came back and had a monster game. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed the time. Jerick McKinnon is on IR. So LaMichael Pirine is the guy left on the depth chart. And we could see a little bit of Blaine Gabbert this week. Any interest in either of these players against a decent matchup against the Chargers?
It's a nice matchup. I mean, it's been hard to start Mahomes, so I'm not going to go for Gabbert. It's not saying that he can't have a good game. That'd be very ironic that if Gabbert had the good fantasy week after Mahomes has been struggling. We'll have to check on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He missed last week with an illness, so you would expect him to be back. Do they want to keep? Are they worried about him being injured and just go with LaMichael Pirine? I don't know. I don't really want anything to do with these guys.
Yeah, that Chiefs-Chargers game, I think these two games are going to be terrible. The Chiefs-Chargers and the Broncos-Raiders. But at least the Broncos-Raiders, you're going to have a lot of fantasy production from the Raiders. So
Yeah.
I think, but the other three teams in that division just useless this week in fantasy. So I would not go there. So this is why we don't play in week 18 in most season-long leagues. But again, a lot to play for, a lot of DFS, all that good stuff. We'll have more in the playoffs. So we'll do the same drill with the wide receivers and tight ends. They're on tomorrow's show. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.